Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Can you hear yourselves okay? You want to have it about this far. Yeah, just like you got.
Right here?
You're about to spit a beat.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How's everyone doing? Oh, I know y'all can do better than that. How are y'all doing? All right. So we are here. The Shades of Becoming.
Correct.
And we are here in the presence of Ola Savoni, Aka Basharan. Ola.
Yeah.
And we're grateful to have you in the building, to see all of your wonderful pieces, right? I want to start here, okay? Lagos, Nigeria,
Yeah.
where you were born, but raised in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So tell us about what that was like for you growing up as a young creative. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so art was many things for me. When I was a kid, I was brought to the United States and some traumatic stuff happened there. So art at that period of time was my safe place. It was a place where I understood everything. Like I knew that the more I did it, the better I'd get. But it was quiet. It talked back to me. It didn't yell at me. It didn't do any of these things that happened in my regular life. So it was my escape. So for me, that was my relationship with art as a little kid.
Yeah.
It was my place where I just got to be. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did that look like when you, I guess, crafted that space of just being, right?
Yeah.
So how did, I guess, you learn to embrace just being in that space?
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a safe space that you created, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how were you more intentional about creating that space? And what did that look like during that time? Or were you even aware at that time?
Yeah, as a kid, I wasn't aware of that. So, and it didn't start there. I grew up, my first 5 years was with my mom in Nigeria. And as any other kid in the world who creates, we just start. We just grab a pen, marker, crayon, and just start scribbling. What tends to happen, we do it on things that we're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But my mom literally put up removable wallpaper and where I would reach. And so I just kept doing it. So when I now came to the United States, my situation was different. And it was my quiet, it was a way for me to get out of trouble. Because once I moved, a young 6-year-old kid moving and changing complete everything in the life. We don't understand what's going on. We think some of the things are our faults. We don't understand. And at my age, when we were kids, our parents didn't talk to you and tell you what was going on. So it was like, we just and in that situation, my wife taught me this: if you don't tell me what's going on, what's going to happen is I'm going to create what might be happening, and oftentimes it's not necessarily the best thing. Does that make sense? So as a kid, doing that because our parents didn't talk to us like that. I would get in trouble, act out, everything was my fault, everybody doesn't like me, this, things, and that. And I was genuinely like a happy kid. You know what I mean? But that was what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
And I would stay safe and out of trouble when I would be in my room drawing or playing video games. That was the other thing. As my sister could attest to that. Yeah.
So I want to fast forward a bit to Oklahoma Baptist University.
Yeah.
University, excuse me. That's where you went, attended, graduated from, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So can you talk about that? What did it look like for you during that time as a college student and being creative? You already were navigating that space as a kid, right?
Yeah.
But now you're older, you're a young adult. What did that look like then?
Yeah, so I'll say pre-going to college, I had a great art teacher. Her name was Kathleen Blake, and what she did was she taught me how to express myself through art. So that was a shift of the meaning of art for me. So as a kid, it was the escape. At this point, it was my self-expression, right? So, and self-expression now leads to self-discovery at the same time. So when I was able to learn how to self-express, I was able to create pieces about my old wounds and the things that I didn't understand, and I found understanding in those. So now when I go to college, Oklahoma Baptist University, again, another amazing teacher named Julie Blackstone. She just pushed me a little further. She was the first teacher, like I'm talking about this teacher, she was the first teacher to give me an F, right?
Wow.
So I went to college for psychology and art, But my art classes, I did whatever I wanted to.
Yeah.
When you're naturally good, it's something you get to get away with a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
My painting classes, I wish I would have gone to now, but I didn't go.
Because you probably were like, well, I'm great anyway.
No, it wasn't. I mean,
Yeah, let's not be humble. Okay.
partially that, but I was also double majoring and an athlete, and I also worked.
Oh,
So when the teacher gave me the option of turning 6 large pieces in at the end of the semester, or 10 medium pieces, or 16 small pieces, I was like, bro, I'm doing 6 large pieces in a couple of days and turning them in. So that was the choice I made. So our painting itself, I wasn't into that much. It was all about graphite, pencil work, fine details and things at that time. So, but she taught all the alternative classes. She taught basket weaving, ceramics, stained glass, and all that. Because I knew that I was good at drawing, that means to me, in my mind, that translates to painting. I just have to spend time on it.
Right.
I took those classes. She FX'd me because I stopped going to class after like ceramics 2, where I learned the basics. Now I can do what I want. She still wanted me to come to class. That teacher instilled in me discipline, right? So, and within the discipline is part of how I became the character of who I am. So one teacher in high school taught me how to express myself. Another teacher taught me the discipline within the arts by failing me. But I came back, and I'm telling you, up until she passed away a couple of years ago, like we stayed in a great relationship, contacted her every time I was in Oklahoma, would go see her. And she's one of the most humble teachers in the world. I knew her from 2012 to 2024. Or 2005 to 2024. And I had no idea she was a world-renowned artist.
Wow.
No clue. She never talked about it to her students. She wanted us to learn from her, just to learn. Amazing.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your move to Nashville.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people, I'm from Nashville, and oftentimes when I hear people come from somewhere else to Nashville, I'm like, why Nashville? Why Music City?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just being negative, you know?
Yeah.
But I want to know your transition here, and what did that look like for you at that time?
Well, so I'm gonna get vulnerable. All right. So now we all have had depression and all that kind of things. Growing up, I had all of those things as well. Though I was looked at as one of the popular kids, one of the funniest kids. I think in high school I got best laugh or something like that in our yearbook, which one of my friends from Oklahoma was right there. And the last time was the 4th time I tried to commit suicide was at 24. And this is already after learning how to express myself through art.
Yeah.
This is already learning that art is my safe place and my voice.
Yeah.
Right? And other things at that point. I understood this. But what happened in 2012 was all my friends had graduated college already. We all started moving back to our homes. We all started to our parents' houses, because at that time, the 2008, 2012 situation with finding jobs and things like that. And we all started to fall back into the same patterns we were in high school. And I didn't like that. I didn't care for it. It put me in this mental state. But I was also working full time, living at my dad's house. And that was the place that I didn't want to be anyway, right? So then what happened was I wasn't creating anymore, right? So at 16, I realized I had to create for my mental state. At 22, after I graduated college, I began to do what everybody else was doing. Get a job, do this, do this. I started going through the motions of life.
But you weren't fulfilled. Yeah.
That beat me up.
So can you talk about what that looked like for you, not being fulfilled? And see, we're here today because obviously you follow your heart and what's internal.
Yeah.
But can you talk about what it's like for you at that time, I guess, navigating that space of difficulty, you're just going through the motion, but deep down, you're this excellent creative, right? But you're not feeding into that, you're not tapping into that. And I guess what advice could you give to people who are also in that space too?
Yeah, so I did not navigate it well at all. I shrunk. I started doing things that I wouldn't have normally done. And at that time, literally drove into the middle of a park in Oklahoma where I knew no one was going to be. I bought a portable grill and some charcoal, and I sat in my car and I ate my last meal. I made and ate my last meal while the charcoal with the windows rolled up was creating carbon monoxide, right? And I remember going to sleep. And a day and a half later, I woke up, right? No one knew I was there. Otherwise, obviously, I would have been in a mental hospital or something like that. All my windows were down. Manual windows. When I tell you I went to sleep, I remember eating, I put my plate on the floor, I let the charcoal burn out, and I went to sleep. I woke up a day and a half later, and at that point, prior to, while I was cooking it, I said, God, universe, whatever you are, if I survive this, this will be the last time. And I woke up, my body was in massive pain, as though I had run a marathon that I never trained for. And I left Oklahoma 3 days later. I told my family that I planned to move, and I did all this. I literally flipped a coin between Boulder and Nashville, and I left. And so prior to leaving, I had a little art show. One of my friends helped me out, set everything up, did that thing, and left in my car was me, clothes, a guitar, and a few paintings.
Wow.
And I got here, I found a place that I was subject to sublease for a month, so I was able to use that address. I got a job at the working for the YMCA, so I had a place to shower. And for about 6 months, I ate rotisserie chicken and V8 because I was like, I gotta get the vegetables. But when I made that decision to move, I wrote down, I bought a blank journal and I wrote down blank canvas, empty pages, time to create my story, right? So what I did was I made a dramatic move, which is not always necessary. But if we look at in history, when the land was barren, what did? We got up and moved to a place where the soil was better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I needed to do in that moment. But it took me, because we're not teaching that. We're not teaching anything. We're not teaching how to heal.
Yeah.
Right? So it took me going into the pits in order to rise up. So for creatives, which everybody is born to create, no matter what religion or whatever you believe in, there's something in what you believe in that says you were created after the creator or something along those nature. We are all born to create. That's why we are born right now. The man and women make kids because we're born to create and reproduce and so on. So, create. If you suck at it, create bad. Because it's not about what you create, it's about the process of creating.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the process of creating, you find healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that because through all of that, you get here to Nashville, your work has been illustrated like at E3 Chop House. Okay, like let's clap for that. I don't know if you guys know what E3 Chop House is. That's big. Okay, your work has been on murals in Clarksville. Okay, just all across Middle Tennessee. How does it feel now? And even sitting in this moment, and we're all here for you, honoring you. How does that feel?
I mean, it feels good. It feels good. I am. I'll point out a painting. There's the second biggest painting in here right now is a self-portrait. Most of the paintings in this room are self-portraits, but that particular one is 3 versions of myself creating my self-mastery, and it's unfinished. Right? So that self-mastery is undone because me right now, yes, I'm excited to be here. I'm glad for where I am. I'm grateful for that, but I'm undone. I'm unfinished. I'm continuing to grow. I got asked this question just the other day by one of my students. He said something along the lines, how do you know when you've reached the becoming, right?
Yeah.
How do you know when you've reached the goal of who you're becoming? And I said, when I go back to source. Because until then, I'm always growing.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I want to talk about a few of your series.
Yeah.
One being elegance refined.
Mm-hmm.
That is it's an eloquent name, number one.
Yeah.
But also, I want to talk about the inspiration behind elegance refined.
Yeah.
What inspired that work?
So, it was inspired by I like paying at a bunch of concerts and different things, but this group of people wanted me to come live paint at an event. I didn't know anything about it. I asked, hey, what do you want me to paint? And they said, we don't know, just come paint and catch the vibe. So I did. And how I did it was very chaotic and just water paint thrown everywhere, dramatic. Like I had the space to just move. There was live music being played, and the music was kind of like EDM-ish, but with some vocals. And the event was pretty dope. They kept rotating musicians all night long. They would play together for a little bit, somebody would get all boom boom. So it was a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so I'm creating this piece, and if I'm going to choose a style of artist that I am, I would say first I'm a portraiter. I like to create portraits and people and figures. So I started doing all that crazy nonsense, very abstract, but I see this woman come out, and it was like a very elegant pose, right? So then I start to bring that out all throughout the process of the live painting, and I like the concept, I like the idea, but about 3 years prior to it, I had this idea to take old masterworks and redefine it. Pieces that were considered elegant pieces of its time and redefine it for what's going on in my life, my viewpoint through my eyes. So I used that particular moment, that abstraction that created an elegant lady, and I played with it for a little while and started telling stories with it. So the elegance redefined is going to be, the first one is done. It's the one with boxing gloves up in the hallway. And that's the actual first one. No, that whole series is the same. But that's the one that took, what's the name of it, Danny? What painting that I use? Pitchfork one. Pitchfork painting.
American Gothic?
American Gothic, yes. So I took American Gothic painting and I took the concept of it and redefined it. So when we look at that, there's two black people with boxing gloves.
Yeah.
A male, which is Basquiat, which is a tribute to an old artist, and then a female, which is a musician that we met at 100 Taylor years ago. Her studio, she was working with Heidi. Her name was Sean. Yeah. So she's the female in that photo. And I took them and put them in front of the building.
Yeah.
That they were with the dad with the pitchfork and his actual daughter. People think it's his wife or something, but it's his actual daughter. And I painted a picture of the concrete jungles in the background, which is like the slums. And what that painting is now redefined at. So I took the elegant painting and that was beautiful and serene, talking about the Great Depression and all that kind of protecting the family and so on. I took that and redefined it into from the slums, from the concrete jungle, we now move into suburbia, yet we're still fighting the same battles, right? We're still fighting the same battles in two sense, dealing with the race and equality and all that kind of stuff, but also we were working for paycheck to paycheck there. Yes, we have more things and nicer things now, but aren't we all still doing the same damn thing?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the rest of the paintings will continue to take that type of concept and apply it to modern day, but still with the chaotic kind of brushstrokes and watered down paint and all that.
Yeah. I want to talk about now the dance and fabric series that you have.
Yeah.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Like it speaks to you in a way that I don't really know how to describe it, honestly.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a merge of elegance even there in that series. And one of the things I've noticed about all of your pieces, everything merges in some kind of capacity, even though there's a lot of variety and difference. Right. So can you talk about that series and the inspiration behind that one?
Yeah, so I was telling somebody recently, sometimes you start things unintentional and the meanings come. Sometimes you start things with a meaning and then you continue. But that particular one, I was literally just painting dancers because I wanted to capture movement.
Yeah.
And then one night, my wife and I put bed sheets in a Goodwill pile. And that night, I had the dream of creating the mixture to dip the fabric in, how I was going to apply it, and how I was going to make it work. The whole process from start to finish. And I woke up at 4 o'clock, went to the studio and started doing it. And that was 4 o'clock in the morning. So I literally had the dream. I woke up and I was like, I gotta go now.
Yeah.
Right, so I went and that process began. The first one I did took 11 days to dry. Now it's at about an hour and a half. So it was continuously to work on the mixture, work on what I was doing in order for it to come out, right? So now I'm still just painting a bunch of beautiful pieces now with texture. The meaning of that came a little bit later when I started the 13th one. The 13th one, I started to look at the dancers and realize both male and female dancers, there's different elements of it. There is the strength of the male, which is what we see, but there's also the strength of the woman. There's also the strength and the femininity of the male, as well as there's also the elegance of them. And so when you say that they all tie in, one of them is actually called, entitled, Elegant Something.
Yeah.
So the meaning and the concept of that came a little bit later, because all I was trying to do was capture movement at first, which the fabric did, and it answered that problem that I was trying to answer. So art for me is it's like a math equation. There's always an answer. Sometimes you have to show your work.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So and I showed my work within that, and then the deeper meaning came behind. So right now, of the Dance of the Wandering Fabrics, the meaning also implies the strength, the elegance, the willingness to conform or to fold down in front of yourself and somebody else.
Oh, wow.
To be bold,
Yeah.
to be brave, and to be beautiful all at the same time.
Yeah.
Within both the masculine and the feminine, and understanding that we have both. Because I don't know, if you actually watch dancers, they have all of those elements. Like, look at the dancer's calves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, look at their arms. Yeah. So that's where that piece is talking about. We're talking about how in order to be full, we have to have both the masculine and the feminine within our being.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Homeless Youth series.
Yeah.
It's something about that series.
Yeah.
I don't know about for all of you guys, but it really, it just stops you in your tracks. I almost cried. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I was like, oh my goodness.
Wait till I give you the book. You will cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please talk to us about that.
Yeah, so in high school, one of my friends, Caleb Prince, he asked me year after year to go with him to a mission trip. And I already had my kind of negative taste about his church. He went to a big mega church, and I was like, yeah, bro, I'm not going with you. But he asked again and again. And then he was like, they have scholarships, so you don't have to pay for it. That was my initial excuse, because my dad's not going to pay for that. Am I right?
You're right.
So I got to go for free, and I said, okay, I'll go. And when we got there, what we were doing was helping build like schools for the homeless community, the homeless kids there, the refugee kids, whatever they were. And so I was there, and I was just playing with the kids. I like kids. I still love kids now. And I'm just hanging out with the kids. We took the group of kids to the movie theater. This one particular little girl and her little brother were attached to me the entire week we were there. And at one point in time, this little girl that was 9 years old told me her story. So if you when you walk around and you see one of the paintings with the poetry written on it, that was my experience with this little girl and her telling my story, her story, and me listening and reflecting back, right? So I didn't write the poem when I was 17, but I wrote down the experience when I was 17. And later on, I wrote down and turned it into a poem. But when I was in college, I now then would go and sit with the homeless people, and just bring food, eat, hear their stories, and I would turn them into poetry. And then at that time, I made the first 3. which were the hands, or not the feet, the at 9, which was the first one, and then the young lady smoking a cigarette. And those paintings came from their stories, and then I got more stories, turned them in to poems, then into paintings. Then when I moved to Nashville, I started painting the remainder of them on Broadway. And I only had 7 poems at the time. Homeless people came up to me and started telling me their stories. And then the last few were finished painting at the Nashville Rescue Mission. Just when they were cooking and doing food, Thanksgiving, and so on and so on. So all those paintings are real stories from real people that I had real interactions with. And the idea of me creating the piece was not necessarily to sell them, but it was to get people to understand not pandemic, but the issue in this country, the richest, the wealthiest, the loudest country in the world. We had kids from our high school in the suburb of Edmond, Oklahoma, that were jumping around from house to house, and we didn't know they graduated, and they were homeless.
Wow.
Part of that time period, and we had no idea. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like, to me, that's heartbreaking.
It is.
We're a rich country. That doesn't make any sense. And then we have the stigma that all these people, they deserve to get there. All those stories, they weren't deserving. The girl smoking cigarettes, I smoke because, is what it's titled, I think. I smoke because, and it goes on to tell you, because I was hungry and this curbed my appetite. I started drinking because it was cold outside and it kept me warm. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, but all we look at it now is, oh, this is just another addict. Let's just step over them. We have no idea why they started some of these behaviors in the first place. So the idea was to create the body of work, not to try to drastically put a bunch of money and throw them at the homeless people, but to remember that they too are human.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I know we are short on time, but I do want to ask these few things as we wrap up.
Yeah.
Because with being great, like yourself, it's nothing like having support. I want to talk about your family, your wife, and your children, because I'm sure even through some of your lowest moments and some of your highest moments, I'm sure it's great to have that support, or look back and see your children and say, wow, you know, your children can look up to you and see all the great things you've done and how you've poured back into communities. There's a lot of people don't see artists as people who pour and give back into communities, and oftentimes serving people and their voices, right, that get stifled. So can you just talk about what it's like to have a family that supports you, your wife and your children, and their influence on your life?
Yeah, that's great. Mr. Richardson, the owner of this place, he literally asked me something just like that. He was like, man, if I was going to be the podcast guy, I would ask you this question. And literally, along those lines, he asked that. So, and what my answer was, when we had kids, so I had a balance. I created a balance of my life. And it was, 1/3 is going to be, I have to create for myself. I learned that at 24. Right?
Yeah.
I had to create for myself all the time, and I had to put that first. So that was 1/3. Another 1/3 was creating as the job. Another 1/3 was finding more work, and then everything else, right? When we had kids, it was like a massive shift. I can't be at 1/3 anymore. There's something else that's I'm
Obligated.
I'm obligated. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like there's a different aspect of the world, so that now switched into a fourth. So but I still have to, my first quarter still has to be me and my mental. Because if I'm not there, I'm not there in any of the other parts of my life.
Yeah.
Right? So I gotta take care of that. When in the airport, when you're on the plane, what do they tell you? put the mask on yourself first before you help your kids, before you help your elderly people. Put the mask on you first. You have to do that in your life as well, right? Then the other aspect of it is I've always been aware of living and doing good things and doing all, but now it's elevated, right? So there's somebody else that's going to be watching my every move. But there's someone else who's going to be learning from my every move. And I've always heard this statement, and I think I heard a guy say it this way on some other podcast or something like that, but he said it so eloquently and I loved it. He said, I have to learn to live for my family versus willing to die for them. We here as adults say, I'll die for my kids, I'll die for this person, I'll die. No, learn to live for them. Eat right for them. Work out for them. Follow your dreams for them so that they learn how to follow their dreams. You know what I mean? Learn how to take a breath. Learn how to apologize within a 24-hour period for them. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So learn how to be the best version. Learn how to become the best version of yourself, because that's going to show them how to become the best version of themselves. I often say there's no such thing as failure unless you quit, right? And one of my students here right now, you can attest to this. I've always said, mimic a kid, an infant, a toddler who's learning how to walk. How many times do they fall on their face, fall on their back, bust their head, and they continuously get up so they can take the first step. And then after they take the first step, they try to run, and they fall and fall and fall until they learn how to run. They don't stop. We can't stop in life. We can't stop anything that we want to do. Yeah, you might have to do some things and work on the side to make extra money, this and this, but follow your dreams. Don't become a 9-to-5er unless you want to be a 9-to-5er. Right? Don't let that settle. Don't settle for that.
Right.
Even if that's what you have to do right now, on your free time, mind your own business. That means I am minding what it is that I want to be doing. I'm working on it. I'm planting it. And I'm watering it every day, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. And when I had my first daughter, or when my wife had my first daughter, thank you, that mindset amplified. It just did. Like I can't turn it on, I can't turn it off. It just amplified. And I want to, like, I've never cared about finances before. I've always been like, the world is going to provide what it's going to provide. I'm going to live the lifestyle that I want to live. If I don't have the money right now, it'll come right before I have to pay. I've always been that guy. But I'm not going to be that guy tomorrow. I'm going to be a mind that sets intentions because I have to plan differently. So since I've had kids, I've been working to become a more structured person, a more balanced person, and you just move differently.
Right.
You just move differently. And sad to say that I didn't start doing this when I decided I wanted to get married, because that's family too. Notice that I didn't say that my 1/3 switched to 1/4 when I got married. Sorry, wife. But it changed when we had kids, and she's included in that. She just came up with something great for us to do, I think like 3 weeks ago, and she said, yeah, this time is hard, we don't get time to ourselves anymore, it's something that stresses us. She said, how about I journal every day, right? And I started to. And she was like, how about we have our own journal that we pass back and forth together? You know what I mean? Oh, wow. And so now we do that. And I think we said, don't let 1 week go by without one of us writing in it. But like, even in the mornings, this past week, I've been busy setting up and getting ready for this. She's like, did you write me yet? And you know, I wrote her, and I think I wrote almost 2.5 pages. I don't know. But like, there was still a lot to share. But I got busy. Mr. Richardson and I talked about this earlier today. He's like, when you have kids, it changes your relationship. And if you're not intentional, you lose it. And then when your kids are gone, what happens? Either you start dating again and get the chance to learn each other again, but what's the chances you might not like each other? Right? Or you don't even try at all. So what he was reminding me was to be intentional all the time, right now. You know? And, you know, hey, I wouldn't have had that without being an artist and doing an art show at his place. And we have insightful conversations in every moment of our lives if we choose to take it and hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
I must ask you about this because you mentioned your book, okay?
Yeah.
And you're also working, I don't want to spoil anything, but you also are working on something that's going to be, I guess, into fruition here soon, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that? And where people can even purchase your work and your book right now?
So there are, as I've become in the practice of writing every day, I am writing all the time. I told somebody, I have so much, there's 108 pieces here, right? I probably have 108 pieces still at the studio and 108 pieces in random places around Middle Tennessee. Like I just have that much work constantly because I create every day. But part of that creation is not always painting something, writing something, molding something, or not writing something or molding something. Sometimes it is just writing. Sometimes it's just thinking. Sometimes I'm creating images in my head. So I started writing the book A Year of Becoming for myself because I wanted to have a guided journal. I wanted to have prompts. So when I do write, I wanted to be able to guide myself in certain ways. So I did that, but in the middle of it, I had this dream and this thought of, because I went and bought my wife a card for her birthday or Valentine's Day, I don't remember, and it was made out of seed paper. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if I was able to create something that takes what we do in our mental and make it physical, and they would coincide with each other to remind us to work on our mental. Mm-hmm. So that's where Manifest and Bloom book came from. So what happens in the book is it guides you to a clear intention, prayer, dream, manifestation, whatever you want to call it. So it asks you about where you want to go, what you want to release, what you want to call in, and then it works you through creating a perfect, or not perfect, but a design of your truth of what you're really wanting, right? So it's going to ask you a bunch of different questions until you get to that bit. And then you write that on handmade seed paper. And so now you take that, and now you tear that up, and you plant it into a pot. Now every time you see that pot, every time you water that pot, you're tending to that dream, that prayer, that intention, right? So now, what I suggest to everybody who do the workshops and things is to get a pot that is obscure and different and random, because now every time you see it, you think about that prayer. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I'm attaching the physical world, which we're in, into your mental space. And I think that personal growth can truly come from that. So then I went back to the main book, A Year of Becoming, and I finished that out. And those are the two books here right now. But in the process of creating that book, I found how important it is for growth to learn your story. So that's what I'm writing right now. I'm writing my story, which is my past, my present, and who I want to become.
Yes.
Right? So it's not saying I want to become the next best artist in the world. No, it's about finding the character of who I want to be in my near future, right? But how do we get to that? We get to that by telling your honest truth of who you were and who you are right now, and then recognizing the things you like about yourself, the things you don't like about yourself. Then you can recognize qualities that you actually do want. Then we can apply that. We can tell our story, then create our strategy on how to become that person, and then you will be that person so much faster. So that new book is me doing what I've done here with you guys, being vulnerable, telling my truth, telling my story. But in that book, it now tells you the things that I've done within that process to get me to this point. My move, my mental understanding of we're all equal, we're all the same. I have to, in order to love my neighbor, I have to actually love myself.
Yes.
Right? And it works through what I went through to begin to love myself. and what I'm going through now in order to create more discipline in my life so I can better love myself and love my kids and love my wife and all those things, right? So it's going to tell my story, tell you how I got to this point, and then tell you what I'm implementing in order to become that version of me. And then hopefully you can take that, write your own damn story. and the important part is write the truth of that story. No one else has to read it. You don't have to be vulnerable like I'm being, right? Once you tell your true story, you can now find out what you don't like. Now you can strategize to become the man you want to be. So that's the next book. And then there's another one, and it's a children's book, which of course I would have never had. And it's called One Day, But Not Today. And it's a kid's book, but it's for the parents. And it starts off with, one day, I'll be walking you through the park, and it's going to be a painted scene of Dunbar Cave Park, which is in Clarksville where we live, and me carrying the baby in a carrier and just walking. And then it's going to go to one day, I'll be guiding you through the park.
Yeah.
And then one day, you'll be running ahead and I'll be chasing you. Skip 20 pages to the end. One day, you'll be guiding me through the park. One day, you'll be by yourself in the park. But one day is not today. So today we will play, we will laugh, we will sing, we will skip, we will fight, we will laugh, we will do all these things. And this is a reminder to us parents, be present for your children.
Yeah.
Stop being so concerned with tomorrow and be here. And that goes back to your previous question. How has my art changed since the family? I would have never created that, thought about that. I may have understood it, but I would never have been needing to create this so that other parents or people who want children or people who are caring for other people to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In conclusion, where can people follow you if they're not already following you?
Yeah.
Where can they follow you? Where can they purchase your art? Just tell them. They need to know.
So right now, there is a young lady named Leah. She's over there. She knows where all the stuff is. And there are books on the back table, ways to pay for it at the back table in this room. And when you walk around, you can look at the things stacked up and scan the QR code, which is going to give you a full price list of everything here. Where you can follow me, my Instagram is Drafts by Ola Shibomi, but if you just type in Drafts by O, it'll come up. Same thing as Facebook if you're doing that. My website is draftsbyola.com. And there are cards randomly placed in different places, but if you also pick up a book, you'll be able to find that information, email, etc. And there are QR codes randomly placed out that also give you all those information.
Okay. And then one last question.
Yes.
A must ask. As you look at yourself now, and maybe it is hard to look at yourself, and sometimes it's hard to acknowledge the greatness that you've done, right? Because as an artist, sometimes it's like, gosh, I could be doing this, I could be adding, incorporating this.
Yeah.
You don't live in the moment and just be present. But when you look back at your life from start to now, what advice would you give the younger version of yourself that maybe experienced doubt, sadness, and just had no idea you would be at this space right here, right now?
Yeah, so one of my sayings, and if you get to talk to me a lot, you'll probably hear this like 50 times, but we're all a canvas, right? Example, this is a canvas. Somebody built the wood. Somebody took the cloth and stretched it. Somebody of your life started that painting. That's your parents, your teachers, your caregivers, your government, your religious beliefs. Everybody around you started that painting for you. Now, if you're fortunate, they give you your brush so you can continue that painting. Sometimes you have to fight for your brush. Sometimes they'll break that brush up, they'll destroy it, and you have to find and pick up the pieces. But at some point in your life, you will get that brush. What are you going to do with it? You have 3 options. Continue that story that they started for you. You can cover parts of it up and paint over it, or you can do what I did. You can wipe it and gesso it, which is just a primer, and make it a white canvas and start painting all over again. What story you want for yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that everything of the past is gone. No, that means, and you released it so you can open it up for something new. It doesn't mean that those things in the past are not going to hurt you or make you sad. No, it just means that I get to choose my own future. But every single person in this world has the opportunity to paint their own picture. That's the point on how we're all creatives. It's not about being, I painted a picture back there, the God in me. That's not me saying, some of my friends kind of, that's blasphemous. I'm not saying that I'm your God. You know what I mean? I'm saying that I am the God of myself. I can only worry about my own personal actions and what I do. Everything else can affect me and be around me, but they are not me. So pick up your brush. Create the life you want to live. And when I was a little kid, I wouldn't tell him anything. If I could go into the past and tell little me anything, I wouldn't tell him anything, because he's gonna figure it out.
Thank you for your time. And we can please give another round of applause.